Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun, deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are talking about being sickened because we've got some sickness out there in the air. We're going to talk about three different things today. One, the Donald Trump prosecution. There was a little bit of a stall to this, but we are seeing that it is actually maybe not done yet. We've got a bunch to dig into. There was a story that this guy, David Pecker, came down. I know he came out into New York, David Pecker, and he was there and he was testifying in front of the grand jury. And we were wondering if the grand jury was done or not. And apparently they're not done. He was there yesterday testifying. And we've got two stories on that, one from CBS, one from the New York Times that we'll dig into. And then there was this letter that came out from a bunch of prosecutors that gave me flashbacks to the letter from 51 intelligence idiots. Remember those idiots who were promising that Hunter Biden was, that whole story was Russian disinfo, those guys? Well, apparently they like that format. It worked for them last time. So 177 this time, former or current, whatever, prosecutors from New York. They're like, let's be like those intelligence people who lied to America and let's all sign our own letter. And so they all signed their letters. You know, they get around. I don't know what they do or where, if they have letter signing parties or whatever strange behavior, but they wrote a letter, they signed it. And we're going to ask some questions about that. You can see we've already got the old Tishter queued up for the House today. Then we're going to ask ourselves about the statute of limitations. We had a conversation about this morning on our members only stream, but we were talking about the different statute of limitations, and I thought it was relevant to this case because the longer this drags on, the less capability they have under any theory of the statute of limitations. We'll talk about some of them here shortly. And then Donald Trump was out there communicating with Sean Hannity about this. So Sean Hannity said, what's your thought about being prosecuted by New York? And he said, well, it's actually interfering with the next election, right? He's saying, not talking anything in hindsight. We're not talking about any prior elections. I told our YouTube censor we were talking about Trump, and he says the word election, and my YouTube censor was just squirreling around in his chair over there this afternoon. I was like, just take it easy, okay? He's talking about the next election, not the last one. So he's talking about this, and he's saying that they're trying to, interfere with this process. And we'll listen to him. Now, I came across this very fun clip about Megyn Kelly. And just because we want to, kind of agitate everybody, she came out and said something about Ron DeSantis coming on her show. And I thought it was fun. So we'll listen to it. And then we'll recap a little bit about what is another attack vector or four that might be coming towards Donald Trump. The Georgia indictment is still proceeding. And so it's been a while since we've talked about that. I've got a brief update for you. You can see all the mind map is here. I'll just run us through it very briefly. Don't want to spend too much time on it, but it is coming. I'm expecting that in May. And then we also have the special counsel saga, which is continuing on. And so we'll do a brief update on that. Some pretty interesting things happening there. And you can see the Trump indictment is not over. They're going to try to get him one way or another. And so we'll piece that together here today. Then we'll turn our attention over to the Proud Boys trial. Very short proceedings today because the Proud Boys trial was only about, I think, 30-ish tweets from Roger Parloff. Short day. Unfortunately, we had some sick jurors in the House. Ugh, man. And it's like, you better be really sick. What kind of sick are we talking about? You have the sniffles? But they did talk about preliminary matters. They're talking about the next upcoming defense witnesses. And, a lot of important stuff happens actually, outside the presence of the jury. So we'll talk about that. And then there was an update on what is going on over at the DC jails, because, there is some rumors that the conditions are not that great, especially for the J6ers who are being held as political prisoners, in my humble opinion. But here we had a couple letters I want to run through. This first one was one that the House Oversight Committee sent over to Mayor Muriel Bowser from DC, asking about the conditions. And it reminded me of some other posts, some other motions that were being filed. And I came across this one from this guy Quaglin, who's still in custody. He's already been sentenced, already been convicted. And he's in custody, but he is demanding his release because the conditions are so bad. His lawyers filed this. And this motion is detailing a lot of the sort of cover-up attempts that are happening there. So if they're saying, no, come take a look at all the conditions. Everything's great. Just come poke around, look around, as everything's great. And then when the people show up, everything is great. That's because everybody has been told to shut your mouth or else there will be repercussions for you. Now, Marjorie Taylor Green was over there. She posted an update and then she released a report through her congressional website, which we will take a look at and see what she has to detail for us. Of course, all of that and more, my friends, coming right up. And we would love it if you joined our community. We're going to get into some good stuff today, but we'd love it if you joined us for our member-only streams where you can comment and post and meet other people. It's a little bit more exclusive. We have a little bit more casual feel to it. It's a lot of fun. Come check it out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, or join as a member on YouTube. No matter where you join, you get access to all of the stuff, including our private Telegram group. We'd love to see you in there. And before we get started today, always want to thank our sponsors of this program, help make this stream possible. Of course, our friends at Field of Greens, which is one of the best products ever because it's green and it's going to make you feel vibrant and free, full of energy. And it also will help lose those leftover pandemic pounds because we're all sick of the fad diets and the weight loss pills and all of that stuff. I mean, we've all heard about it. We've all been there. We've all done that. We know that they just don't work. But you know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, and the weight would probably just fall right off. But vegetables, not a fan, and fruit, who's got time to prepare that all day, every day? You don't have to. Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula, very specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you burn calories faster and lose weight a healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand, the only one backed by a better health promise. And you're going to look and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come at your next checkup. When your doctor says, wow, you've lost weight, whatever you're doing, keep it up. Okay, so let's get you started. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com, type that right into your browser, enter code Robert when you fill your cart up with all the goodies there, and save 15% at checkout. It's code Robert at checkout. The vegetables want to be eaten. You're going to feel bursting with green energy, the good kind, and it's going to be a great decision. You're going to love it. Fieldofgreens.com. Check out with code Robert. And we'll ask ourselves. All right, we'll just save that for later. All right, we'll get into this one right now and jump right into the meat and potatoes of the show today. The Trump prosecution is not over. Alvin Bragg still meeting with witnesses in New York. We're going to go through that today. Remind ourselves about what he's trying to thread here, how he's trying to accomplish any criminal charges, given the fact that he's butting up against a statute of limitations problem. A couple different scenarios by which he could get that through. We'll explore some of those here shortly. But I want to talk through what this new witness is, who he is, what this story involves. It is this guy named David Pecker, CEO formerly of AMI, somebody who's also involved with the National Enquirer. And evidently he testified again. This is the second time he's been in front of the New York grand jury. And we're asking ourselves, what are we doing here? We spent a lot of time on this case. This is one of the weakest cases of all time. First of all, it's old. Other prosecutors have declined this. Other federal institutions, FEC and others, have declined anything to do with this. And so it feels like it's coming out of nowhere. And as we were piecing together and trying to reassemble what potentially Alvin Bragg, the DA, is trying to do here, we've been asking ourselves about the credibility of his witnesses, in particular, Michael Cohen. And we have all sorts of documents that show Michael Cohen is not only a convicted perjurer, but it sounds like he's lying about a lot of these other things because we have the documents. So as this is all percolating, it felt like the grand jury was coming to a screeching halt. They were not showing up or they were working on other cases. But then all of a sudden, boom, we fast forward, we wake up, and this guy, Pecker, has testified all over again. What's going on here? From the New York Times, they tell us, a former National Enquirer publisher testifies again in the Trump grand jury indictment proceedings. You see a picture of this photograph here, and they're calling him a key player as they're weighing evidence against Trump. David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer, also testified previously in January. He was seen there The grand jury panel had been impaneled since the early last year, heard from at least 9 witnesses, including Mr. Pecker, now appeared twice. Unclear whether the grand jury took any action on Monday, but one of the people with knowledge of the matter said it had not voted on an indictment. Now, grand juries operate in secret. We already know that. Pecker was a key player in the Hush Money episode. He and the tabloid's top editor, they helped broker the deal between Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen. Of course, they say it's Trump's fixer. And they write, ever since Trump predicted his arrest, all eyes have turned to the grand jury. This could be a 5-year investigation coming to fruition, but the timing is subject to quirks. This grand jury meets on Mondays and Wednesdays and Thursdays, though it doesn't typically hear evidence on Thursdays. Now, the timing of the indictment might also depend on availability. They tell us 16 of the 23 grand jurors must be present to conduct any business. Prospect of indictment has raised a number of concerns. They're focused on the payment. In recent weeks, Bragg's office signaled to Mr. Trump's lawyers that the president could face criminal charges, offered him a chance to testify. That's why Trump started getting communicative about this. They have a right to answer questions. Trump has denied all wrongdoing. He's posted several things on Truth Social. We're asking ourselves, what is this guy going to talk about? We don't know. He might have damaging stories about Trump. Now, this is a fun sentence. For a brief time in October 2016, Miss Daniels appeared to have just that kind of story. Her agent and lawyer discussed the possibility of selling exclusive rights to her story of an encounter with Mr. Trump to the National Enquirer. She's trying to pitch that in October. That's a big, juicy story there, right before the November election comes up. Her agent and lawyer discussed potentially with this guy, we'll sell you this story, which would then promise to never publish it, a practice known as catch and kill. They were just going to send it over to him. He knows Trump, and then they're going to bury the story. But then the New York Times journalist had fun with this sentence, as you can see. In spite of that conspiracy, Mr. Pecker didn't bite. Well done. Instead, he and the tabloid's editor, Dylan Howard, decided that Mr. Cohen would have to deal with Miss Daniels' team directly. And when Mr. Cohen was slow to pay, Mr. Howard pressed him to get the deal done. And to prevent Miss Daniels from revealing her discussions about suppressing the story, we have to coordinate something, Mr. Howard texted. 2 days later, they transferred the money. That gets sent over. And that's the update from the New York Times. But CBS is also hearing some other things. Here's what they tell us. That the Manhattan grand jury is hearing from that key witness, basically the same story, but they get it from Trump's lawyers. They say by the end of the day yesterday, the Manhattan district attorney had not communicated with Trump's legal team. That's according to one of Trump's lawyers, Joe Tacopina. Susan Neck-Kelly's, another one, also said no communication from the DA on Monday evening. So more about David Pecker. He's the former CEO of American Media, was spotted entering the building where the grand jury was meeting, according to 2 sources. He played the key role, parent company, the catch and kill story. Trump was in Waco, Texas, and he's now explaining that he thinks that this is basically done. 2 hoax bomb threats were made in Manhattan, and a powder was also mailed to them. Welfare check on Hunter Biden and his crack dealer. A note said a big thing about Alvin was a problem. And then 177 former federal prosecutors signed on to a statement. Outraged about what's happening. And we're going to take a look at that story. Now, Kara Scannell is the individual who was able to grab that letter. You see this here. says that 177 former prosecutors sign on to a statement to denounce attempts to intimidate Alvin Bragg, who Trump has repeatedly criticized for investigating his role in the hush money payment. Kara Scannell is a CNN correspondent. She grabbed the letter, which says the following. March 26, a statement by former federal prosecutors condemning threats of violence and attacks on the Manhattan District Attorney. That's great. We all condemn violence here. We don't want anybody to threaten violence. In a democracy, they say we must protect prosecutorial independence and the rule of law. Huh. Let's see if their standard holds. They write, state and federal prosecutors must pursue justice without fear or favor to anyone. We must protect prosecutors from efforts to tempt or improperly influence them. Indeed, in democracy, it's critical to maintain prosecutorial independence. Oh, I guess from fear, from partisanship, from political attacks, or anything like that. Huh. Independence and democracy. We don't want any improper influence. We want to pursue justice, right? We want to do those things, not be partisan hacks. Let's carry on. In the wake of recent reports of attacks on the Manhattan District Attorney, we must speak out. Okay. He says, they say 177 of these people who don't sign their names apparently, says former President Donald Trump, maybe they did, maybe it's on part 2, I don't know, it's not in this letter, has repeatedly issued vitriolic attacks on the DA and most recently made statements that can be construed as inciting violence. Is that true? He said that there could be potential death and destruction if he's charged by the Manhattan District Attorney, whom he described as a degenerate psychopath, an animal, which, you know, is colorful language, certainly, and an animal. He says this afternoon, a death threat came in. Alvin, I'm going to eliminate you. Now, you can't ascribe that to Trump. It was delivered to the DA's office. Reports indicate that hundreds of threats have been made against the DA. Again, I don't condone any of that at all. I don't condone violence. I don't condone threats of violence. In fact, that stuff is illegal, by the way. So if you do make a threat to a prosecutor, that is illegal, and they will look into that, and there will be consequences for that. So I'm actively not giving legal advice, of course, but it's a caution, right? There are laws against threatening prosecutors. And we actually were speculating about this if Trump was getting close to that line. Now, calling somebody names, right, is not instigate, they're going to call it stochastic terrorism and all of that stuff. I think what he's talking about is sort of warning that what is about to happen is going to cause a constitutional emergency in this country, which I don't think is without merit. Take a look at what is going on throughout the rest of the world. What's happening in Israel? They're trying to make a judicial change and it's not working well. They have a constitutional problem they're working through, or whatever the nature of that conflict is, but it's not good. We have a similar situation in France. When you have constitutional disorder, there is potential death and destruction. It is not an invitation for it. He's warning that this is a stupid thing to do, to have a state level prosecutor take a bogus political charge, or try to fit a charge into a non-existent box and turn it into a narrative. They say hundreds of threats have been made against the DA. They say, as former prosecutors, we denounce the efforts to intimidate the attorney's office, and we call upon all to support and protect prosecutorial independence and the rule of law. Now, again, we don't condone any violence. I'm not interpreting what Trump is saying as condoning violence, encouraging the violence. But he is, I think, rightfully pointing out that this is not a joke of a case. I think a lot of people on the left or on the side who just scream about prosecution don't realize the ramifications that this would happen. It is like dividing by zero. It creates an illogical outcome in the United States, especially if he's running again in a situation like this. Now, I'm not saying that you never prosecute a president, but I'm saying there are consequences for doing that, and you have to properly weigh those things. And if there are criminalities that come out and it deserves the prosecution, you got to make sure you're jumping into that with both eyes open, because you are opening a constitutional Pandora's box that might wreck the whole system, to be perfectly honest. And maybe that's what they want. So this is what they said. Now, I get irritated when they sort of get, they get angry when one side uses specific language, like inciting violence or like being a partisan rather than being an independent, prosecuting to pursue justice versus prosecuting for partisan ends, showing equal treatment to everybody rather than having political enemies or favoring or disfavoring political opponents, right? You see this language, these types of statements are chock full of what they claim they are or what they claim to be, and 177 people will sign on to a letter like this. Ooh. We're prosecutors. We care about independence and so on. We're very independent. Right. Now, as you know, the head prosecutor, the attorney general out of New York, Letitia James, uses very similar language, and nobody writes big letters with 177 prosecutors signing on to it when this happens.
Will you sue him for us?
Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the ass.
I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president.
We need to focus on Donald Trump. We need to follow his money.
What is fueling my soul right now is Trump.
This illegitimate president. I look forward to going into the office of Attorney General every day, suing him, and then going home.
She's very angry about this. We're going to be a real pain in his A. Did you hear that? That's kind of violence.
For us?
Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the ass.
I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president.
Illegitimate. She's saying that he has no basis to be the president. That's insurrectionary language. I'm curious if the FBI is identifying her. The point is, this, you can find this all over the place. They say it all the time. I play here the montages quite regularly, but they do it all the time. It's okay to do it against the right. When Donald Trump says this is outrageous and somebody's acting like a psychopath, who he is kind of acting like a psychopath, quite frankly, it is nuts to think that this case is the one that you're going to make the whole country and very likely the whole world stop and pivot on a Stormy Daniels case out of your prosecutor's office, Alvin Bragg. Are you kidding us right now? Are you serious? So it's continual. And, here's another one I found. I don't know what this one's about, right? They play both sides of the game. When she's running, she talks that language. Then when she seizes the position of power, then she comes out and does the solemn game. We're prosecutors. We care about, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to be indicting this or suing a former president and solemn vow. I got to uphold justice, blah, 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 blah. No, they're partisan hacks. That's it. So don't sign letters faking like you're concerned about the independence of your prosecutor's office when the prosecutor's offices have become politicized and weaponized.
5 witnesses and review of millions of documents that were submitted by Mr. Trump and others. I am announcing that today.
Yes.
We are filing a lawsuit against Donald Trump.
We will not allow this administration, this illegitimate president who sits in the White House. We're going to send a message by marching to the polls in our high heels and even backwards. And the days of this president are numbered because of the power of hate. Yes.
See, so it's just the same story. It's okay when they talk like this. It's okay when they're getting out there and calling people illegitimate and being aggressive. She is elected. She is the attorney general for the state of New York. And Alvin Bragg is right next to her. They're doing all the same stuff. So both of them have become partisan political hacks, but former prosecutors who have politicized the prosecutors' offices are going to be suddenly get mad when Donald Trump starts kind of pushing back against them in a political manner. If they don't want to be politicized, then don't be political. You're politicizing the whole system by prosecuting Donald Trump, and it's not going to stop there. But they don't care. Now, we've had questions about this. Can Alvin Bragg actually do anything? I don't want to spend a ton of time on this here, but remember the charge that we were speculating they might be trying to squeeze through was section 175.10, falsifying business records in the first degree. And when we looked up the Georgia, I'm sorry, we'll get to Georgia in a minute. When we looked up the New York statutes, we were asking ourselves about what level of felony this was in the state of New York, and whether it even was a felony, and how it became a felony, and whether Alvin Bragg is running out of time. And one of the questions was, what prompted this new reinvestigation to bubble back up again? And maybe it's that Trump actually announced his run for presidency. Maybe something else popped up that would toll the statute of limitations. And as a general rule in New York, the statute of limitations is 2 years for a misdemeanor, 5 years for a felony, generally speaking, right? There's all sorts of contingencies that extend it and make it change. But that's the general rule. And so you just ask yourself, wait a minute, what year is this? What year is this? Okay. And all this stuff took place back in 2016. How far back can we go? And so the one argument would be that it would be any crime that was March 2018 or more recent, because that would put it within the 5 years, right? Something more recent. It could be a more recent crime. Or it's not. It is actually a crime from prior to March 2018. And there's some mechanism by which the statute of limitations is told. In other words, if you get charged with a crime in New York and they don't prosecute you in 2 years, let's say a misdemeanor level DUI, they wait 2 years and 1 day and then they charge you because their blood results came back late or something. They don't get to charge you. Clock ticks, it expires, you're done. 5 years for a felony. So if this was a 5-year statute, clock has expired. Game is over. So what are the theories that allow the prosecutor to continue to play this game? Well, one might be that you could use this concept of saying there was not any reasonable due diligence, or there was reasonable due diligence that was done in trying to find this crime, but they couldn't find it for some reason, right? Something was hidden, something popped up. And so anytime that there was this window where they couldn't have found the truth with reasonable due diligence, you exclude that from the clock. It just gets extracted from the calculation. And so we don't know what the dates are or whether they're trying to use that, but two other maybe better examples of how they could potentially extend the statute of limitations would be if they could exclude the time of those 5 years, the time that Trump was not in New York City. So if all the time that he was in Florida, all the time that he was in Washington, D.C. or out of the country, if they literally went on a calendar and calculated the dates and said, okay, from 2016 all the way to 2023, we can take that full length of time and then subtract the times that Trump was not in New York and subtract that. Now, there's no real basis for any of this, as far as I can tell. It's all untested because this is all applicable to the president and it's a complex legal issue. But there's another concern about whether you could even toll the statute of limitations for the entire presidency, right? All that entire 4 years that Trump was in the White House. Is it possible to toll those 4 years? So you subtract the 4 years from the entire calculation, and would that put him back within the statute of limitations? We don't know. But I was reading a little bit more about this when I was assembling this mind map, and my understanding is that there's some basis for this, that there's a dissent by Judge Alito in the case of Trump versus Vance. And Alito is agreeing with that. He says, actually, the presidency might toll the statute of limitations for criminal prosecutions in various states around the country. So we'll look into that if that becomes relevant as this continues forward. But that's how this could potentially continue on, right? That's how they could theoretically prosecute that, even though it is outside the statute of limitations. And so before we move on, now Trump, even if this New York prosecution is stalled and dead, there are still two major attack vectors that I think are higher priority in terms of concern for potential charges. We'll talk about those, one out of Georgia and one out of the special counsel's office. But before we get there, Trump was responding to some of this. He actually was on with Sean Hannity, and he was asked about all of these prosecutions. Mr. President, how does it feel to be potentially indicted out of New York?
Great to see you again.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. As reported, as you know, you're facing a lot of legal challenges. In your opinion, does this help you or hurt you in terms of your chances to win in 2024?
Well, if you listen to the fake news media, it helps because they're all saying it's a scam. Even people that don't like me are saying this is a terrible thing to do for a country.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it helps or hurts. I can tell you, in my opinion, it's a new way of cheating on elections. It's called election interference. What they're doing is, if they can't win at the ballot box, because I'm leading everybody by a lot in the polls, for every Republican, frankly, and every Democrat by a lot, including Biden by a lot. And they can't beat you that way. They're going to do this kind of stuff. This has never been done like this before in the history of our country to this extent. People are pleading with the prosecutor, don't do it, don't do it, it's wrong. Even Democrats, even people that traditionally are not exactly my fans are saying, don't do it, because I didn't do anything wrong. I did nothing wrong.
Let me ask you this then.
Now, we're going to go back to that point. He talks about leading in the polls, and we'll take a quick look at what's going on with DeSantis here in a short second, because Megyn Kelly had an interesting take on this. But some interesting things here from Donald Trump saying,
You, in terms
Listen to the fake news media, it helps because they're all saying it's a scam. Even people that don't like me are saying this is a terrible thing to do for a country. I don't know whether it helps or hurts. I can tell you, in my opinion,
I think it helps him if he is indicted. And if he's not indicted, I think it helps the Democrats. I think the left will be very agitated if he is not indicted. Now, the Democrats and the people who want to take Trump out have to be very careful about which one goes first, because if they're going to take a swing at the king, they best not miss. And they've missed many, many times. And this is the next big one. Right? He's gearing up for another run at this thing. He's in the middle of it. And if they don't stop him on this one, he may win this again. And boy, oh boy, they're not going to be happy about that. So it's all eggs in the basket. They've got to pick what to do here. And if the New York prosecution is coming to a little bit of a putter, then where else can they focus? And so we see, we'll get to Georgia and to the special counsel, both of those continual prosecutions in a short minute. But when I was listening to Megyn Kelly, I was seeing that she had a very interesting take on Trump and what Trump said about being in charge in the primary. And here's what she said about Ron DeSantis. She said, Ron DeSantis is afraid. I'm just going to put this out there. He's afraid. Whoa.
He's not going to get a pass.
Let's listen.
I will say, for the record, we asked DeSantis to come on the show. He has not said yes. And I find that very interesting. You know, I love Piers Morgan. He's a pal of mine. But why would you go sit with the British guy and not come on the show? And I do think there's a reason for it. And I will venture to say he's afraid. I'm just going to put it out there. He's afraid.
Content warning coming up. I forgot. This one's extra spicy. Content warning. Earmuffs for the kids out there.
Because he knows the kind of interview that I would give him. He's not going to get a pass. We're not there to rub elbows with these guys who may or may not be president and inure ourselves in their good graces. The reporters need to remember that. The relationship is supposed to be adversarial. For the love of God, these journalists should show it. I don't give a shit if you've fallen in love with DeSantis or Trump, for that matter. They're not your friend. Your friend is your audience, is the truth. Grow a pair. Your business is not to be loved. It's to tell the truth. Respect is what you want. Respect will get you an audience. Love is for pundits who just want to say the nice, sweet nothings that people want to hear. The whole thing is bass-ackwards. It upsets me. I will say, for the record, we asked DeSantis.
Woo! Extra spicy from Megyn Kelly. And I love that. I would love to see more journalists actually ask hard questions and pin people down. It's like patty cake all the time. with these people, and she is extra fired up. And I'd like to see Ron DeSantis go on there. I'd like to see Trump go on there and get some actual truth from these people, because it's a lot of copy and paste journalism out there, and she considers herself a journalist. I don't consider myself a journalist at all. I don't know, what her entire framework is for her theory on, ethics and morality and what a journalist's mission statement is and all that stuff, if it's not born in that world or lived in that world. But the fact is that we talk all the time here about copy paste journalism and about the games of patty cake that everybody just plays around. Oh, you're a great governor. Okay, you're a great interviewer. They just laugh at each other and just sort of, play games. And that's what we're tired of. And Trump, for all his faults that he may have, he still will engage. And Megyn Kelly is calling DeSantis out. So if there are anti-Trumpers out there, right? If all of the DeSantis people and all of these other people want to actually make a mark in this and deviate the Trump train early in the primary, they've got to start making headways with people like Megyn Kelly, who's not a Trumper. Okay, she's not a Trumper at all. So it's very interesting how this is shaping up. Now, we'll continue on. Here we see that there are other attack vectors for the former President Donald Trump. Georgia is one of those. You see that as this goes on, we have talked a lot about this case, but I just want to refresh our recollection on this because Trump is not done. I actually think this is probably a bigger threat than the other New York case. I think Georgia is a bigger threat. Remember, this one we've talked a lot about with Emily Kors. She was the grand juror who had some of those weird conversations. She said this when she was on CNN.
Emily, thank you for coming on. I do want to say off the top, as you and I just discussed, but for everyone to know, you are somewhat limited in what you can discuss under the judge's orders as of now. But we do know, of course, one of the biggest questions remaining for everyone that wasn't in that jury room with you is how many people are in trouble here? What can you tell us about how many people you recommended as a group to face indictments?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. And I'm hesitant to speak to something that the judge made a decision not to share. I don't know if everyone's aware of this, but there was a hearing about what parts of the report should and should not be published in its various forms. And the sections that were removed were consciously chosen to be removed. And I don't want to say I have better judgment than the judge.
Okay, so what she's talking about was the partial grand jury report. We went all the way through that, and we're getting closer and closer to a final ending of this investigation. And some of the evidence that they were able to reveal, my understanding is there was some final witnesses that were presented, and some of the evidence that they were able to dig out was, of course, the Trump to Raffensperger phone call where he called the Secretary of State and said, find the votes. We also had another phone call by Trump to the Georgia House Speaker calling for a special session. And then we had this phone call from Trump to a Georgia investigator asking about signature matching, right? These are the actual phone calls. So this is a little bit different than what we heard in New York. Here, we've got some actual evidence, right? It sounds like they've got Trump on the phone. Now, they're considering RICO charges was the last thing I heard. CNN was reporting that, and using this to go after kind of a conspiracy type of investigation with multiple co-defendants, looking at solicitation of election fraud and other false statements. Now, this grand jury, my understanding, is a special grand jury, so they're going to finish this, and the next panel is probably going to be sworn in early May. So we've got a little bit of a hiatus on this one. And then all of the findings from the special grand jury would then be rounded up and then presented to the next grand jury in early May. Trump right now is fighting to get the final report not released. And I think that ruling is going to come out any minute now, basically any day now. This was the partial report that they did release. We went through this in a prior show, but very briefly, you can see there wasn't much here. It was 9 pages, and most of it was just redacted out. So you can see page 1 here, and then we'll just fast forward. We get a little bit. They say, thank you to everybody, page 2, and then fast forward, boom, we're on page 8. Okay, so where's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? We get to the conclusion. That's it. And we get, a signature page. That's it. So there's not much more. They're going to be releasing those other pages. Trump's team is trying to fight those other pages from coming out, and then we'll see where that goes. But this was also the case where Rudy Giuliani was making presentations to the various legislatures. We also had Lindsey Graham made a phone call, if you remember, and he got asked about that. And so I think there's actually more evidence in this one. We don't have statute of limitations issues. We don't have old declinations of prosecutions. These are all fresh. These are all 2020 charges. And this prosecutor is on this. She's been on it for months and months and months. They've got 75 witnesses who came through there. And we know that significant indictments are coming. So we'll keep our eye on that in Georgia. And then lastly, we've got the special counsel. And as we were refreshing our recollection on this, we wanted to go back through the scope of the special counsel's charges. And this was the original appointment order that came out from Merrick Garland. And if you see here, there's a lot. It says special counsel can conduct an investigation into a bunch of things. One, lawful transfer of power, anything about January 6, anything relating from January 6. We have a whole nother portion of this, which is the classified materials, the classified documents matter. And then fourth, we get anything else, any other federal crimes arising from the investigation into these matters. So the special counsel has a lot that they can dig into. I basically broke that up into 4 categories you see here. The Mar-a-Lago documents, classified materials. I think the Biden documents diminish that pretty significantly because, he's got his own problem. Then we've got the January 6th insurrection. I think they might try to connect that to the Proud Boys statement, stand back and stand by. We've got all the 2020 election interference stuff. Basically anything before, what the heck? Basically anything before, where did my mind map go? It just went away. Anything before January 6th, anything after January 6th, not directly connected to the January 6th event could theoretically be charged. And the special counsel is working hard on this. He's already gotten a number of witnesses sort of taken care of. He got the executive privilege broken to Trump's former chief of staff. So Trump has a lot of exposure here. He's got his chief of staff has no basis to not talk to the special counsel. Same thing happened with his attorney, his defense lawyer, Evan Corcoran. The attorney-client privilege has been broken due to a crime fraud exception. Mike Pence and Donald Trump are trying to stop Mike Pence from having to testify. Trump says executive privilege. Don't think that'll hold given what happened with his chief of staff. And then Pence is talking about legislative immunity for being the Senate president. And then the final big thing that's happening right now is Representative Scott Perry. And he has his cell phone records. He was ordered to disclose all of those to the DOJ. That's on appeal now. And we're asking whether there's going to be a separation of powers issue between the judiciary, the special counsel through the executive branch, ordering the legislative branch to turn over his cell phone records. So it's a full-on assault. And you can see this would have really consequential ramifications. New precedent, right, for executive privilege with presidents, new precedent for attorney-client privilege, for vice presidents, for presidents, for Congress people. It's a lot. So even though New York is wrapping up, I think Trump's exposure is only escalating, actually, and it's looking worse for him because all of those privileges are breaking down. So we'll continue to follow, of course. We'll see how this unfolds. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing this with your friends and family. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. Now, let's turn our attention to the next one. Proud Boys trial day 45, a short day in court. Unfortunately, we had some ill jurors. As usual, let's turn our attention over to Roger Parloff. He'll give us the breakdown here. He tells us that today is 9 weeks of Proud Boys trial. Holy moly. 9 weeks. He's been here for day 45. By comparison, the Oath Keepers trial only went on for 29 days. And he gives us a little bit of background on what happened yesterday. Of course, we read through all of the tweet threads from Roger Parloff. And you can follow him at rparloff. But he reminds us that yesterday we had two witnesses, and we had George Meza and Alonzo, who were both on the stand. He says on the cross-examination, the government played a 4-minute selfie video, but he's not going to play that here. In the video, he says, when is violence justified according to Republicans? He said, in my opinion, we didn't do enough. F yeah, what happened in DC was called for. So apparently that video got in. On the cross-examination, that selfie video came in. The jurors heard that. He also said that J6 was the most patriotic act ever committed in this country in the last 100 years. Jurors heard that too. He called it a glorious event and closed, it was the patriots who led and who still lead the way. Uhuru, brother. Now, there's a much milder video that Meza made. He's on restricted grounds, and we like to fast forward through those. He says here, the 2D witness, or the second witness, was Alonzo. We heard from yesterday, read through that thread. Said on direct that he was insulted at the notion that Proud Boys would have contemplated storming the Capitol. But on the cross-exam, they showed him some messages. And he didn't sound like he was insulted. And if you remember yesterday, they asked him that. They said, you said that you would be insulted if somebody stormed the Capitol, but they said they were storming the Capitol in this Telegram group, and you're sitting there. Did you see it? You didn't respond to it? You weren't insulted? You didn't leave the group? You didn't respond in any way to confirm you were disgusted or communicate that in any way? So were you really disgusted? Maybe not. He was evidently, they say, not physically fit enough to enter the Capitol, but he monitored the events on the radios and from the lawn with the Proud Boys. And when news came on that somebody was shot inside, Alonzo ignored it and asked only whether Pence had been betrayed. Somebody else brought him a water bottle from inside. We talked about that. Now, when they were in session, these were what the messages look like in court. And of course, couldn't see this yesterday. Looks like these are extractions. They tell us where it came from. The universal iOS generic. You see the links here from the Telegram app is where they came from. And it says here, a post from Deplorables 51. This would have been Alonzo. It says, going on the 6th is not about fighting the lefties. It's about joining patriots on the Capitol steps, awaiting the outcome of history that affects us all. And then down here, he says, in my opinion. And they were referencing this to say on the Capitol steps. Oh, there it is. You're going to storm it, aren't you? Awaiting the outcome of history that affects us all. But this is actually not bad, right? It's not about fighting lefties. It's about joining patriots on the Capitol steps. I mean, I think that there were people there believing that you could be there without being in violation of the law. In other words, they would get the same benefit that a lot of other protesters have gotten when they were protesting. You could sit on the Capitol steps, protest outside. You see this all the time, right? You see the abortion lovers. They're out there in front of the Supreme Court, protesting all the time. Whatever. And that's kind of, I think, what they're intending to do. We're going to go out there on the Capitol steps and we're going to protest. It's going to be peaceful. It's just going to be like any other protest where people are protesting, but business carries on as usual, in my opinion. So that's sort of how I would reframe that. Now, he had not evinced being insulted when they talked about this. One message came in from ALPB. Looks like that message was from another member, Michael Priest. Says, J6 may be the moment people need to take DC. Insurrectionist language there. And then somebody else said, it may not be that peaceful. As you can see, it may not be that peaceful. Dun, dun, dun. And, the Proud Boys were saying this was all a lot of locker room talk, which I don't doubt. In the Telegram chats, Alonzo did not seem to regard that footage taken to be helpful. And this was the section where he was talking about Eddie Block, who's on YouTube at Eddie Block Films, says, Crip or not, snitches get stitches. Which was not a very nice thing to say, but he thought he was a Fed, and you can say things when you're, it's a common phrase. Snitches get stitches. Doesn't always happen. It's just, grade school kids say this. Grade school kids say that, don't tell Johnny that I like Sally or something, you know, the snitches get stitches, right? I mean, we said that as kids. I don't think anybody ever got stitches, but we said it all the time. But if you say it in a Proud Boys Telegram group, the federal government freaks out, thinks you're stealing the country. So be careful about using that language. Advise your kids accordingly. He continues, he says, here on January 14th, perhaps mixing up the National Mall and the Washington Monument, Alonzo writes off Eddie Block. And he was upset because Eddie was filming and Eddie was there as the Proud Boys videographer, and he was thinking he was doxing everybody. And so they're trying to make this as, you know, show conflict between the two Proud Boys. Maybe somebody thinks he's a Fed, somebody else thinks he's a Fed. Oh, and so they go back to Alonzo. Oh, so you don't want to be filmed. Oh, why? Because you want to hide your insurrectionary behavior. So Roger gets us up to speed. And finally, we get the judge. Judge Kelly's back on the bench. Roger's like, finally. Uh-oh. We're hearing that there may not be any evidence heard today. Apparently, a juror is ill and defendant Zachary Real has a medical issue. We got two people sick. Judge Kelly decides we'll come back and talk about it, hops on the bench. Stephen Metcalf and a number, wow, okay. So Stephen Metcalf is a defense attorney for Dominic Pizzola. He says, Your Honor, I know it's a little empty in here today, but I want to let you know that Enrique Tarrio's attorneys, Hassan and Jaraguay, they're caught in traffic. They're running a few minutes behind. They'll be here in a minute. And the judge says, that's okay. Actually, weird. As I emailed you this morning, we have a sick juror and we have a sick defendant. Judge is like, what the heck? So for the moment, all we can do is kind of hope and assume that we have a healthy jury tomorrow. But the protocols are that Mr. Real, the defendant, sick defendant, he probably can't be here until Thursday just because he's sick and jail protocols and all that. Judge is inquiring now. He says, well, let me ask you this, Miss Carmen Hernandez, who I'm screaming at regularly. Sorry about screaming at you yesterday. Sit down, sit down, sit down. However, would your client be willing to waive his appearance if we just went on without him? Could we just have him appear telephonically? Maybe tomorrow we could just go on with the trial if the juror's feeling better. Carmen Hernandez says, let me ask Judge. I'll see if I can get in touch with him. He hasn't been transported, it sounds like, to the courtroom from the jail facility. I'll see if I can reach him. Carmen Hernandez says, give me a minute, Judge. All right, goes, figures that out. Prosecutor says, Judge, for a quick second here, can we hop on the sidebar phone? Anything? Judge says, sure. Would love to talk to you. What's up? Hop on the phones. Jurors are not in the courtroom, of course. Sabino Jaraguay, defense attorney for Enrique Tarrio, he arrives in court. He's like, he just like throws the doors open. I made it. And then he's like, am I in trouble? He was weaving in and out through traffic, flying in there. I've been there, man. I know how that feels. Is the judge going to murder me? Am I in contempt? And they're like, actually, no. Juror's sick and the defense is sick too. He's like, oh. So why did I run over that little old lady on the way here? He's like, I'll go back and leave a note after this is over. All right. Well, that's good news. So the judge gives parties a chance to discuss the situation now that he's there. He says, all right, well, let me know when you guys have figured this out. All right, let me know. If you want to move forward without your clients, then we'll move forward without your client. We'll come back in 10, 15, or maybe 20 minutes. I don't know. We'll see. So then Roger gives us an update and how he's getting some exhibits and some other things. And look, Roger is on Rumble now, which is great. He's sharing Rumble links. Shout out to our friends on Rumble, where YouTube doesn't ban you. Roger is having some difficult time with YouTube, by the way. His channel is getting strikes all over the place because YouTube is YouTube. But Roger says, while we're waiting, I'll show you that George Meza, this was posted on a chat and it was forwarded there since he was kicked out. So they'd kicked him out and they posted this video. It's an exhibit. We're not going to play it here. Go follow Roger Parloff if you want to see it. Judge Kelly says, all right, we're going to be back here in a minute. And we reconvene. He says, okay, any updates? Carmen Hernandez for the defense says, yeah, Your Honor, I was able to get in touch with my client and we talked to him about the situation. he would agree to waive his presence for the confidential human source, which is another witness that evidently they have queued up to come in to testify. And Carmen says, and Your Honor, we also have a sergeant from the Capitol Police who's also going to be testifying about some permits. And so when we have that witness, he'd also waive for that witness too. So actually, she says, yeah, we can proceed without him if you want. And he said that, Your Honor, he doesn't actually think that he has pink eye. He's been seen by another medical professional today. So maybe he got pink eye in the jails. We're going to talk about the DC jails here shortly. He's going to be seen by another medical professional today. So if it's not pink eye, maybe he can be there tomorrow. Prosecutor says, all right, like, Judge, look, we don't want this case being appealed for any stupid reason like a presence waiver or something like that. And so we just request at some point that Zachary Real appear telephonically and just formally waive this thing, Judge. Like, we don't want to get in trouble for this. Defense says, yeah, that should be no problem. Facility is usually accommodating. I can get him on the phone. I'm sure we can do that. No problem. So the judge says, okay, great. So we'll get him on the phone. We'll plan on that tomorrow. 2 witnesses teed up for tomorrow. And if we have a healthy jury, we'll be ready to go. Your client can just call in regardless. If he's not sick, he can be here. If he's sick, he can stay there and call in. Great. Anything else? Carmen Hernandez chimes in. Yeah, Judge, we also have Mr. Finley. All right. We've been extending his reporting to prison date. And I'll be filing with another judge to further postpone his reporting date. Looks like Mr. Finley is maybe a co-defendant or a defendant in another case who's been sentenced and is going to prison, but they need him as a witness. And so they're trying to get an extension of a self-surrender date. Mr. Finley, Judge Chutkin. And judge says, okay, well, let me know what's going on that. Let me know if you need me to reach out to Judge Chutkin and let them know that we do need that witness. Anyone else? Yeah, Ethan Nordine says, Judge, well, we've got our witness, like we've flown our witness in from LA. They're sitting there in DC. He's like, our witness just came out from across the country. They're sitting here now. If a juror is going to be sick tomorrow, we would like to excuse the juror and have the second alternate come in. All right. So they know who this juror is, and they probably don't like this juror. So if this juror is sick tomorrow, Judge, kick him out of here. Okay. We've got a trial to run. Dang it. My witness is all the way out here from LA. And we're not here in trial today. And if we're not here tomorrow, that's adversarial to me in our case and our client. And so we got to swap in another juror. And he probably saw the juror who's sick. He's like, oh gosh. It's, she probably came out with a Hillary sticker on her forehead or something. He's like, oh gosh, she's sick. Perfect. How sick? We need an alternate, so he's really excited about this. Now the judge says, I'm reluctant to do that. All right. But I'll wait to hear from all parties. Maybe we can get an alternate in. That's why we have alternates after all. So then they discuss the logistics of getting the waiver. Of course, Zach Real is in Alexandria Detention Center. Hernandez says, let me get him on the phone right now. Let me see if we can just do this right now. We're here. So I'll just get him on the phone. We'll waive this and we can carry on. The judge says, yeah, great. Okay, so while we're waiting, prosecutors, what is your position? If the juror says tomorrow, I'm still sick. And again, we don't know how sick this juror is. What's going on? Food poisoning? Is it a 24-hour thing? Is this the longer bug? We don't know. Prosecutor says, well, I don't know, Your Honor. It's actually fact dependent, so it's kind of premature to speculate. Let's get more facts on where we are tomorrow. Well, you can speculate tomorrow. He says, well, one way or the other, we'll have the other jurors present tomorrow. So, do you want to put the alternate in, or would you object to that? Hassan raises his hand. Your Honor, hey, while you guys are talking over there, we just got Zach Real on the phone. So he's on the phone right now. Nick Smith. And maybe they call it right now. He's being passed the phone right now. And while the phone is being passed around, Ethan Nordine says, and Your Honor, while we're getting that set up, we could also discuss jury instructions today because we're getting close to the case being closed, and maybe we can just get the jury instructions buttoned up here today. Judge says, well, I'm not really prepared for that today, and there's probably some subset of you, some of you, not talking about you, Nick Smith, but the other flabbergasting defense attorneys, like maybe Carmen or something. They are probably not prepared either. And Carmen's like, I'm prepared. But then they get Zach Real on the phone. He's on the speakerphone. Hassan is bringing Hernandez's phone to the judge right now. I'll take it up there. Walks it right up there. Here he is, Your Honor. Judge is obtaining a waiver for 2 witnesses if he's still ill tomorrow, and Real agrees. He says, all right, Mr. Real, so I understand you're sick today. You feeling okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Understand that tomorrow we've got 2 witnesses who are going to be presented. Your defense attorney, Carmen Hernandez, brought both of them. One is going to be the CHS, and the other person is going to be somebody else who's going to come in and testify. I think he's a Capitol Hill police officer. So we've also got both of those coming in tomorrow. If you're not here, are you okay if we proceed in your absence? You can appear telephonically just like this. Are you okay? Do you know you have a right to be here? Yes. Do you voluntarily waive that? Yeah. Anybody forcing you to waive this? No. Do you consent to this? Yes. Okay. Very good. On the record. Okay. No. Okay. Give it back to the judge. Goes back. Now he gets the waiver. If you're still ill, no problem, says Zach. I'll see you tomorrow. He's like, I didn't want to get on the bus anyways. Your courtroom's annoying. He says, that's it. Okay, well, we're done then. Anything else? No. Perfect. Well, we're done for the day. He says, we're going to resume tomorrow for at least 2 witnesses, and we'll get through it. Now, Nick Smith chimes in and says, well, let's do some disaster planning, all right? Like, I got to flesh out the rest of this. If we can't get witnesses or defendants on Wednesday and Thursday, can we stay here longer on Friday, says defense attorney. He says, well, that's a contingency on a contingency. We're not going to get there yet, Mr. Smith. So we'll get there on Friday. I'll look at it then. We're done for the day. Adjourned. Slams the gavel. Everybody gets out of there. And that's it. End of the day. Very, very short. Day 45. Adjourned till tomorrow at 9 a.m. Hope to see you then. Oh, you will, Roger. You will see us for sure. And so that, my friends, came over from Roger Parloff. As usual, senior editor over at Lawfare. Journalist, published all over the place. And a real nice guy for live tweeting these things for 45 days. Make sure you're following and supporting our friend Roger Parloff for the great updates on Proud Boys Trial 45. We'll be back tomorrow to see what else they have in store for us and, of course, continue to cover. Now, the Proud Boys have been sitting in jail for a long time. And we have to talk about the conditions. The DC jails are disgusting. That's according to many congresspeople, one of which is named Marjorie Taylor Green. And she was visiting the DC jails, and she gave us an update and a report. But she's not the first person who's had questions about this. In fact, Congress has been on this for some time. And the House Committee on Oversight sent a letter over to the mayor of DC asking the following, drafted on March 9th, from James Comer, coming out of the Congress of the United States, to the Honorable Mayor Muriel Bowser. They write, Dear Mayor, the Committee on Oversight is now investigating the DC Department of Corrections and the CCDF, the Central Detention Facility in DC. They write, the DC jail facilities reported mistreatment of pretrial detainees connected to the events of January 6, raised committee concerns about the detainees' violation of constitutional and human rights. They tell us that eyewitness accounts of conditions, especially conditions for the J6 detainees, paint a picture of despair, hopelessness, and a severe abuse of justice. No prisoner in the United States should be treated this way. Therefore, the committee requests certain documents from your jail facilities and requests you to direct your people to answer our questions. They say the committee is investigating reports that detainees have been subjected to inhumane treatment while incarcerated. They say MTG visited the facilities in November 2021, and despite repeated attempts by DC to not allow that visit, she made it in. She drafted the findings of her report in 2021. and the tour of her facilities showed evidence of abuse and neglect. One detainee had written that he had used the same contact lenses for at least 6 months. One inmate reported being beaten and not being provided care. Another showed evidence of having a fractured bone that was left untreated. Another reported being served food with chemicals or other substances on it. There are reports of detainees not being given haircuts, being forced to live with clogged toilets, all confirmed by MTG's account. One detainee with very severe and documented food allergies described how he had not been provided any alternative food options and was placed in a position of either not eating or being in severe pain from the food. So the committee is now in charge, and we plan to confirm the accuracy of these reports of disparate treatment by the J6ers. During Green's visit, non-J6 detainees were permitted a lifestyle very different from the J6ers. Non-J6ers were getting law school student instructions about their court cases, but the J6ers didn't get access to it. So the DC lawyers will just talk to the non-J6ers. Gosh. The J6 detainees did not receive access to the seminar, but instead said that they were denied access to even their own lawyers. Given the choice of taking a shower, you can talk to your family or you can talk to your lawyer. Which one do you want? Do you want a shower, your mom, or your lawyer? Which one? You get one. Choose wisely. If the allegations made are correct, these are serious abuses by DC. Now, the committee is concerned by reports that they are facing a unique form of mistreatment due to their beliefs, severe human rights abuses. MTG said that they'd been denied access to a Bible, denied access to their communion based on their vaccine status. Green witnessed non-J6 detainees participating in the Justice Policy's Young Men Emerging Unit, where they get workforce opportunities and barber shops. But none of the J6ers were allowed in there. Instead, they were locked down 23 hours per day, and many of them have grown long hair, beards, and fingernails. Reports that water had been shut off for days as punishment. There was standing human sewage in toilets, many of the cells. Hot meals were served cold and congealed. Some inmates had observable injuries. No documentation. Drug use all over the place, including widespread marijuana odors. The committee is not alone in its concern, by the way. This is not just angry Republicans. On October 13th, a DC District Court found that the DC Director, Quincy Booth, and Warden Wanda Patton violated detainees' civil rights. Here's what the judge said in that case. Said, I find that the civil rights of the defendant have been abused. I don't know if it's because he's a J6 defendant or not, but I find this matter should be referred to the Attorney General of the United States for a civil rights investigation into whether the DC Department of Corrections is violating the civil rights of the J6 defendants in this case and maybe other cases. As a result, the matter was referred over to the DOJ. After the referral, the U.S. Marshals Service came in and conducted an unannounced inspection and a review of the facilities. Here's what they found. From October 18th to October 23rd, an 8-person team inspected the facility, interviewed more than 300 detainees. The team found egregious conditions at the DC jail facilities. Footnote 12. Statement by the U.S. Marshals Service published November 2nd, 2021. However, on 10/24, DC employees ordered the marshals to leave the facilities. Wait a minute, what? One marshal said he had never seen a jail bar marshals from entering. Interesting. So the marshals go in, they find egregious conditions, and they get kicked out. The acting U.S. Marshals summarized the preliminary review as finding evidence of, quote, systemic mistreatment of detainees, and forwarded the results to the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. In response, the DOJ announced, they said, oh, crap, and they did transfer 400 detainees from the DC jail. However, none of the J6 detainees were part of the group removed from the DC facilities. Everybody else gets to go. The J6ers, they get to sit in there and rot. They get no access to anything, only families, only showers, only lawyers, one at a time, maybe. No Bibles, no communion. You get no participation in other activities that everybody else gets to participate in. On April 19th, committee Republicans wrote you a letter identifying various violations of the civil rights, including reports of the inability to obtain essential services, a denial of living conditions, sanitary living conditions, and prolonged time in solitary confinement. And when we sent that letter in April, committee Republicans did not receive a response, though another federal court later confirmed our concerns. They say that since the 2021 letter, the district and its handling of crime and those accused of committing crimes has reached new lows. And so, Mayor Muriel Bowser, under your mayorship, district homicides are up 40% over the last year, which itself sets recent records for crime. Even President Biden has agreed with Republicans. Congress must intervene. So here's what we want to know from you, Mayor. 1, all documents, all communications about the J6 detainees' waiver of speedy trials. Why is it taking so long? All documents and communications about complaints coming in from the J6ers about cell conditions, sanitary conditions, food access, legal counsel, any complaints, every single sticky note that came across your desk, Mayor, or your office, we want to know about it. We want all information about the jail facilities policies and their COVID policies since January. All documents about the U.S. Marshals inspection, why they were kicked out. And we want arrangements to allow full access to the DC jail facilities. To make arrangements or to deliver documents, let us know. We have the ability to do this. Your friend, Marjorie Taylor Green, and James Comer, and Clay Higgins, members of Congress. And so they actually did go and visit the jails. Marjorie Taylor Green was over there and posted this over on Twitter, where she was giving us some details about what she found. She wrote the following: from our visit at the DC jail yesterday, Democrat Oversight Committee members Jasmine Crockett, Robert Garcia sang the jail's praises. Shame on them for not knowing the long history of outrage in DC about the jail conditions. They didn't do their homework to know the DC jail had inmates and defendants clean, scrub, and paint the week before we got there to make it look good. They criticized Republicans for being kind in our questioning, but did not raise any issues at all. We were not allowed to speak to any other defendants in any other areas. I talked to so many of them on my last visit. They told me plenty about the jail. Some told me about their education and job opportunities the J6ers didn't have. Others about learning the legal process from Georgetown law students. And some screamed and begged for help, saying they'd been in solitary confinement for 4 months. When I asked about the trans biological males being in the women's area, Jasmine asked if the jail provided sanitary supplies. Republicans want to keep trans biological males out of women's prisons and jails, but apparently Democrats just are concerned about their tampons, I guess. That's what she says. Now, Jasmine and Robert didn't care about the J6 defendants, their complaints about medical treatments. They didn't care about the J6ers' complaints about courts and judges. They just praised the jail after our tour. Either they like jails and approve of two-tier justice systems, or they're easily fooled by fresh paint. Says, I think the Oversight Committee needs to hold a hearing so we can continue to investigate the two-tier justice system that reigns in Washington, D.C. So she was just there and obviously not happy about what she had seen. And this was the brief summary from the last visit. On Thursday, November 4th, they got a 3.5-hour tour, months of persistence. They went and visited it. And so you can read the full report here from Marjorie Taylor Green. But it is interesting. We'll see if the House Oversight Committee ultimately holds any hearings or if there's anything further that comes out on that. But we'll continue to follow. Thank you for joining us as we do. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. And so we will leave it there. I want to jump into your questions and your comments and your super chats and all the good stuff. But ultra shout out to our friend Dolphin Fan, who gifted 10 memberships over on YouTube. And I just saw that come in. And of course, I can't read the things, but I did see it come in. And so thank you to Dolphin Fan, and welcome to all of our amazing new members over on YouTube. And don't forget, new members, don't forget to grab the link to the private Telegram group, which is in the community post on the YouTube section. So we'll take a look at what's going on. And we had 2 super chats come in here from our friend Fred, and from Ronnie, and from Michael Allen Hughes. Thank you, everybody. Michael Allen Hughes started us off, says, nauseated, outrageous, displeased, unhealthy equals the USA. Well, there is a lot of nauseation going on here, especially in the Proud Boys trial. That is for sure. Good to see you, Michael Allen Hughes. Thanks for the chat, my friend. R. Cole says, hey, Rob, unblock Allison Cole, please, sir, and thanks. Okay, I can do that. I can't do that right now, but I can definitely do that. It sounds like an accidental block. Hey, Fred Petamonte is here. Says, by the way, Johnny emailed you our locals ID. Fred, I got it. I'm going to email you back. I ran into a situation on locals. They changed something on me. I'll tell you about it in our after party. Fred Petamonte says, Johnny said, Johnny said, Fred, prosecutors no longer try to find the truth. They'll do anything just to win, and prosecutorial discretion is far too broad. Wow. That's a really smart comment from Johnny. Well, I'm surprised by that. He says, Johnny, so by the way, if you're not up to speed on this, Johnny is Fred's dog. You see him here in this little emoji over here, this little, very cute fellow. Apparently, this is what they were talking about this morning, maybe over breakfast, over coffee. Johnny said, Fred, probably agitated as we are, says, Fred, prosecutors no longer try to find the truth. He probably slammed his newspaper down. They'll do anything just to win, and prosecutorial discretion is far too broad. Smart. Very smart dog. I agree with him completely. In fact, let me know if he's running for office, and we'll endorse him here. All right. And so thank you, Fred, for that. And that, my friends, is it for our friends over on YouTube. And thank you very much for the generous super chats that came in. And let's say hello to our friends over on Rumble before we say hello to our friends over on Twitter. Says, oh, hey, this one came in from Black Pilled Red. Says, I'm a retired, what did I just do to the screen? There it is. From Black Pilled Red over on our Rumble friends, says the following. I'm a retired cop. I have somewhat of an idea, but what happens to FBI, CIA, IRA cases, past, present, and future, once treason is proven? It's a good question. I'm guessing. Oh, I see what you're asking. Yeah. So like if you were to say what would happen to all of the J6 cases if we were able to prove there was like a massive conspiracy and they were actually the victims of a crime, then they would be, in a just society, dismissed, expunged, pardoned, exonerated. They would be retroactively released. They would dismiss them, essentially, dismiss them and exonerate them. So there would be no further record of that. If that were to happen, and perhaps one day it will. Thank you, Black Pilled Red. We're living through interesting times. I mean, that's kind of the problem when you weaponize the whole system. If it becomes weaponized, then it's going to follow the same ebbs and flows of society. The Democrats are going to get in, prosecute all the Republicans, and the Republicans are going to get in, and we're going to prosecute all the Democrats. And the stupid game is going to go on and on and on, around and around we go until the country spirals out of control, which is kind of where we're at right now, which is, what the Democrats are excited about. We also have, let's see who's over on Rumble. We've got Donut Mind Me, Jan X over there. We got T-Tones in the house. Good to see you. Pepe the Gray's over there, along with AmeriQ and Seth Covington's over there. And shout out to all of our friends over on Rumble. I appreciate everybody watching over there. And, you know, Rumble's doing some cool stuff over there. We were talking, I was checking out what Steven Crowder was doing. He had like over 130,000 people live the other day. Holy moly, man. It's good. It's good for alt tech. We need that. We definitely need that. And so shout out to our Rumble friends. I appreciate you guys. All right. And so let's say hello to Twitter before we jump off and attend to our post-show after party and debrief. We forgot to get the Twitter yesterday. Felt like just a terrible person, because that's what you are when you forget your Twitter friends. But who is over here in the house? We've got, how many viewers do we have? 3. Holy moly, out of control. Who's in the house? We got James says, have the Red Cross do inspections of the concentration camp in DC. It seems like Marjorie went in there. She wasn't too happy about it. Danny McWilliams is asking, are you an FBI informant? Asking for my friend Johnny. What would a non-FBI informant say? Well, I don't know. What would a Fed say? Probably I'm not a Fed, so I'm not going to say that. I think if I were a Fed, you'd know, because I would have already thrown myself out the window. So I'm not. Here is another one from EMJ sharing a link from Trump, who is giving speeches all across America. And so, all right, my friends, well, I think that is about it for us. We are going to leave it there. We're going to head on over to locals. And if you're a YouTube member, don't forget to join us on Telegram. Grab the Telegram link and join us, because we're going to continue on for a little bit longer, chat, get some feedback on some of the stories that we're sharing and talking about. Hit your comments all very shortly. And so we'll leave it there. If you'd like to join us, you can over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Throw that into your browser. Join us on Telegram as well. Don't forget to get your field of greens. Be healthy with your daily servings of fruits and vegetables. It tastes good. I have mine. My mom has hers now. I get to tell my mom, are you eating your vegetables, mother? Huh? So sons and daughters out there, get some for your parents too, and say, eat your vegetables. See how they like it. You had to deal with it for like 16 years or however long. You know, my mom still says, are you eating enough? Are you eating your vegetables? So she still gives it back to me too. So it's good. It's all love. We all got to eat our vegetables, and it's up to us to continue to harass each other until we do. So check it out at fieldofgreens.com. Use code Robert when you check out. Also want to shout out my former law firm, our friends over at the R&R Law Group. I'm not there anymore, but they're still helping good people. They're rocking and rolling, helping good people charged with crimes. You can find them online at rrlawaz.com if you happen to know anybody in the state of Arizona who needs some help. Also want to thank the mods who mod down the fort for us. Our friends Vienticus Prime, K Bean, Just Cause, Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zuluzite. We've got Geomancy, our friend Zach Nichols, and John Allen, keeping things nice and orderly for us. Our friends Sleepy Dog Lee and Geegum Geegum as well. And so that, my friends, is it for us on the day. Members, stick around on Telegram, on locals. We'll see you in a short minute. Everybody else, hopefully you have a beautiful, beautiful evening. You sleep very well, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow, so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a beautiful evening, my friends. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.